Blacks in technology.
Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology.
Once again, back is the incredible. Welcome, everybody, to the Blacks in Technology Big Tech. I had to get my Public Enemy in there. That's what that was all about. If anybody doesn't know, who's not a hip-hop fan, they don't know what that whole thing was about, I was just welcoming us back to another Big Tech Talk episode, number 71. This is UI UX Making Tech Usable. My name is Greg Greenlee. I'm the host of the Blacks in Technology Big Tech Talk podcast. If this is your first time listening to our podcast, you can check us out at the following URLs. We are at www.blacksintechnology.net. We are also on the Twitters, and that's at Black in Technology. That's BLKINTECHNOLOGY. You can also check us on Facebook. We have a Facebook group, and that's facebook.com/Blacks in Technology. We also have a LinkedIn group, and that's under Blacks in Technology as well. We're all about branding, so got to keep it consistent, right? If you are on the Twitters and you have questions for our guest tonight, tweet them using the hashtag BitTechTalk, and that's BITTECHTALK. Who is BIT? Who is Blacks in Technology? We are a tech-focused community and media organization, and we're focused on increasing diversity in technology. We always focus on forming new partnerships and opportunities to assist our members with their continued professional growth and development. So if you want to partner with us, if you want to reach out to our wide network, send us an email to partnerships@blacksintechnology.net. If you have any other general inquiries, just send us an email to info@blacksintechnology.net. And if you want to sponsor one of these world-renowned great podcasts that we put on, every other week, send us an email to sponsorship@blacksintechnology.net. All right, so we are proud to announce, I think we announced this last podcast, but we'll do it again because I think we just went live with the blog post. So we're proud to announce that we are partnered with the Conference. We're the official diversity sponsors for the event happening in Detroit, Michigan, and that's at the Motor City Casino. That's May 29th and 30th. We will also be holding a BIT meetup. The venue is to be determined, but we will keep everybody informed. Just keep an eye on our website. We will definitely be releasing information about the BIT meetup. But we're just happy that we are partnering with Self.Conference. So Self.Conference is a mix of fantastic tech presentations and insightful soft talks in fabulous downtown Detroit. They are filling 2 whole days at the end of May with mobile, web, hardware, software, process, and team talks to help you expand your knowledge, meet other technically minded folk, and immerse yourself in Detroit's tech renaissance. That is going to be a great conference. I hope to see you there because I'm going to be attending, and I will definitely be at the meetup as well. So any people from Detroit, come check us out. They're also offering us BIT membership a discount. So go check out the website. The post is up right now. There's a discount code in the post. If you want to attend this conference, definitely sign up. Definitely use that code to get your discount. Also, I want to send a shout out to Verizon because they did a great campaign called the Potential of Us campaign, where they feature other notable Black tech professionals, and they featured me, yours truly, in the campaign. Also, along with people like Kristen Rashan from Divas and Dorks, and Charles Hudson. He's a partner of South Tech DC. So it's a great campaign. Really excited to have the opportunity to do it. They came down they flew down to Cincinnati, and they did like this great cinematic type piece video, and it was great. But if anyone out there knows Charles Hudson, I don't think we've ever done a podcast on venture capital. So if anyone knows Charles, I looked at his video on the site. Very inspiring. Would definitely like to have him on a podcast. So anybody knows Charles, tell him I'm looking for him. I want to get him as a guest on the podcast so we can talk about venture capital. What else? What else do we have going on? Blacks in Technology seeks a volunteer public relations and marketing person who is excited to apply their academic knowledge to real-world writing, media relations, marketing, and promotion scenarios. So if that's you, shoot us an email. We definitely need somebody because I hate doing this stuff. I'm not good at it anyhow. So we need somebody that's good, except me. So anyhow, we want to welcome our guest, Dr. Danielle Smith. She's a UI/UX expert. She's also a human factors psychologist specializing in user research, market research, user experience design. So, Dr. Danielle Smith, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Hi, Greg.
I also want to let everybody know that she's an advisor a bit too, and I've been wanting to get her on a podcast for quite some time. She finally agreed. I'm glad that we have her. We're going to talk about UI, UX, and get into the nitty-gritties of it, and about her job and her experiences and, everything about her. So let's get started. I'm excited about this. You excited, Danielle?
Yep, I'm excited, Greg.
You sound enthused. So our first question that we normally ask our guests to come on is give us your background experience. This is not really a question. I guess it's more of a statement. Give us your background experience and tell us a little bit about some of the tech companies, because you worked for some fantastic and exciting tech, some of the big names too. So tell us a little bit about your background and then tell us about some of the tech companies you worked for.
Okay. So for the past almost 15 years now, I just realized how old I am. I've been working in technology for a while. In a variety of roles, but most of them have to do with, they fall under the buckets of research or design. I started off working for, in a more academic role, doing research for UT, School of Health Informatics, on a patient safety grant. I worked for Lockheed Martin, supporting NASA down at Johnson Space Center. So there, did habitat research, design, ground support, tools research and design, space station support. Yeah, that was fun. I worked for Dell, doing various and sundry things, but always on the what's called the business client side of things. So the IT, designing tools for IT. And then I worked for PayPal, and now I work for an independent research company called Sentier or Sentier, depending if you are French Canadian, but in Texas we say Sentier. And we do independent research and a little bit of UX support for various telecom. We work for a couple of cloud companies, technology companies, and e-commerce. So generally it's support for various technology companies.
Wow, those are some heavy hitters. Dell, PayPal, NASA. Those are some big establishments there. So what type of? Let me ask you this. Give us a little bit about your educational background. Like what is your degree in?
Okay. So I have an undergraduate degree in psychology, and I have a graduate degree, PhD, in industrial organizational psychology with a concentration in human factors. And what all that means is I study the interaction of humans and technology in a very broad sense. The industrial organizational part of that is looking at, in a general sense, looking at how people operate within companies. So, a lot of training, a lot of selection, how you get hired onto a company. And looking at the human factors part is more so traditional interaction with technology. So there's a little bit, you might hear people who focus on human-computer interaction. Other folks with human factors backgrounds look at physical ergonomics, so, repetitive stress injuries and things like that. It's really a broad field, but the degree gives you that basis of psychology, how people think, how people move, and can perform within other systems.
Wow, I mean that's yeah, definitely. That's interesting to me because you would never, at least I wouldn't, not until I met you. And actually, I can't remember how we actually met up. I know it was definitely a lot, but I never really understood or I guess knew about the complexities and the psychology behind just how things are actually designed and placed and where things are located. So it's interesting to me that that is an entire field, and it takes that much, education, to make tech, to make things usable.
Yeah, it actually was surprising to me too. And I was honestly, when I was in grad school and I took intro to human factors, I was like, there's no way I'm going to have a job. Everybody knows how to do this stuff. This is all common sense. And then as I got deeper into it and saw, learn more of the science, and then when I got my first internship, I was like, oh, right. So the point of our degree and our study is to represent the user, and that's what I learned when I got out into the world, is that I work with some of the biggest, I call them big brains. I work with some of the smartest people in mechanical engineering, in rocket science, in different very special fields, but they're really good at what they do, and it's my job to come in and make sure that a human can use what they do. And so that's the way I look at it. By going to school for this, by providing that foundation, I'm able to kind of stand firm and be strong against some of these really, really smart people. I've worked with doctors before, and it's just hard to imagine trying to teach a doctor how to build a training program for something that, he's done every day. But when you turn around and try to teach it to a group of students, you want to make sure that it's structured in such a way that they can understand it, that they can learn it, that they can repeat it, and have to kind of stand firm and help with that. And I do want to say that you don't have to have a PhD. There's lots of people out there that do a great job with, far fewer credentials. This is just my path. This is the way I went.
Gotcha. And it's it's funny that you kind of mentioned that about the doctors and about making the training and things like that more usable, or tech even just more usable for people, because I had a recent experience with the software. I won't mention any names, but when we were actually when we were actually speaking with the vendor and going through kind of like this webinar about kind of why we should choose them as as our next insert, what they were being used for. They had mentioned that the user interface, which was like this fit client that you installed on your computer, while this user interface, that the user interface was designed by engineers, and it sucked. It literally was the worst. The software itself had tons of features, but we never were able to really lock down and really use it to its potential because it was just so convoluted. It was tabs within tabs within tabs, with another tab, and then within that tab it was buttons, and it was unusable. And And during during the presentation where they were showing us how to use it, they had been working with it. And of course, since they designed it, they could easily navigate all around it. Click here, click there, click here to do this. And we're looking like, okay, yeah, that'll work for us, because that's exactly what we need. These, very granular features to be able to accomplish what we need. But then when we got it installed, it was just like, this is the absolute worst. We never. I think we had it for a year. I think we probably used it maybe a couple of times. We were paying $1,000 a month for this piece of software, and it was just unusable.
So that's a great example, because that's one of the things that I think people forget about when they think about user experience, is that commercial software has real consequences for it not being usable. And and so I came from a commercial software background. I mean, the stuff I did at NASA was all for, professionals, very smart, trained professionals. And then the stuff I did at Dell was for IT people. But it always amazes me that people are surprised that you do need to design that software. On one hand, you can think about it like a good example that comes up a lot and that is used in textbooks a lot is there was some software that AT&T used to use for their called Tech Support Center. And it was a classic example of human factors where they did some analysis, they redesigned it, they just moved some items in the menu, some basic kind of surface level redesign. And by doing that, made the call center operations like 1 minute more efficient, times the number of operators times the volume of calls, saved millions of dollars.
Wow. And
that's the kind of thing that, classically, human factors people have been involved in. Now, but there's tons of folks who do enterprise UX. So, like, there's a large team at Dell, for example, that does management consoles for their servers. And making sure that you can use the software that you're paying for, that you don't need a special, because the days of specialized IT people that are trained on this one piece of software are non-existent. I mean, they're long gone. I don't know when they were, but anyway, you don't want to have to make that investment in learning somebody else's tool. And so the way that we were able to be successful at Dell anyway was to come in and say, hey, engineering, you've invested a lot of time and brain power in making all of these features. But any feature that a user can't find does not exist. So let us take over the UI and make sure that they can find the features that they need. Because, again, this is revenue for the company that's making the software. And then on the other hand, this is a tool for some other business to make revenue. So we need to make sure that we're enabling that second interaction.
That was a great quote. Any features a user can't find does not exist. I'm tweeting that right now because I love that.
I'm sure somebody else said it first, but it's one of my favorites.
Excellent, excellent. So for the uninformed, I don't know if we mentioned it yet, but just tell us, what is UI UX? What do those letters stand for?
Okay. So UI is user interface. UX is user experience. They're often used interchangeably, but technically UI generally refers to the user interface on software. And so you may meet folks who say they do UI UX, and that usually indicates that they do some level of UI level programming. So they either do CSS or HTML or XAML or some .NET flavor or whatever. And user experience can be interaction design, it can be graphic design, or some mesh of those two. But if you're like me, you don't necessarily develop the UI. You design it and lay it out and test it, but someone else codes it up.
Gotcha.
And generally, UX is a broader term. So
So yeah, let's get a little bit into that because we titled this show UI UX Making Tech Usable, right? Which was purposeful because I didn't want to equate UI UX to just web design. I didn't want to give that I didn't want to give that off as this is a web design podcast. I wanted people to understand that this was a tech podcast. UI UX is more broad than just web design. So if you don't mind, give us a little bit more in-depth information about the different areas of tech, if you can. Anyhow, I don't know if this is too broad of a question. That UI UX encompasses.
So it's a hard question to answer because it's of my background. So I look at it like anything that a human touches, anything that a human is involved with has some user experience elements. You'll find different definitions out there where UX only applies to an application or only applies to a remote, piece of hardware. But generally, it applies to how people discover something, use it, maintain it, and repair it, and then dispose of it or reuse it. So it's the entire life cycle of some piece of technology. It can get overwhelming. So a lot of times we will, tend to focus on, okay, we're just going to focus on, like, take an ATM, for example. We're only going to focus on deposits and withdrawals from the ATM. We're not going to focus on the experience of the technician servicing that ATM or the experience of someone installing that ATM. So we know those are all elements of the user experience. The users are different in that entire life cycle, but we're going to focus on these things.
Wow, so I never really thought about, and that's an interesting point that you just made, because when I say users, I should say, I'm thinking of someone who's going to use the technology, right? Maybe, like, use the keyboard, use the phone, use whatever piece of technology. I'm not actually thinking about the technician and them actually needing to repair it, and that. So you actually focus on more than one type of user. It's not just the layman, so to speak. It's the technician and the engineers and that as well.
Oh yeah. So for example, at Dell, my first program was Optiplex, and that's a desktop. So while I did test that power button to death, make sure that power button, presses right at the right depth and everything, I also test, so I got, users to come in and make sure they could find the button and press the button. But I spent the bulk of my time bringing in IT service techs to make sure they can open the box, replace the RAM, replace hard drives without, cutting themselves or taking too long or losing screws. So I had several different sets of users just for Optiplex, that one desktop.
Wow. Yeah, see, I had no idea. I never knew it was that. I guess I never knew that I never looked at it as, more than one layer of users. I'm only looking at it from the outside and saying, okay, the person who actually comes up and uses it, not the person who has to repair it or anything like that. So that's interesting.
Yeah. And a lot of times that can make the difference in a product's success. If you have an awesome end-user experience, but this thing is impossible to maintain, or nobody, that can make or break a purchase decision, basically. If you have an awesome end-user experience and a great service and maintenance experience, then that makes this purchase decision a lot easier and makes a lot of people, happy.
Gotcha. Definitely makes sense. So, some guests, they attribute their interests and their respective careers to someone influential in their life. Was there someone who influenced you to pursue being a human factors engineer, and even beyond that, pursue your doctorate? And who was that person, and how did they influence you?
Oh, wow. That's a lot, because it's not something I knew about. You know, I went to undergrad thinking I was going to be some sort of therapist. I wanted to be a clinical psychologist. Once I started along the way, I was actually in like research methods class or something in psych, and my TA was like, "Oh, you know what? You're pretty good at this research thing. You should be a research assistant." And our professor is looking for one. So that guy, who actually works in Austin now, influenced me to even think about doing research. And then once I got into this, I was actually doing research, doing applied cognitive research. I was doing jury decision making, so eyewitness testimony and all kinds of memory experiments in undergraduate. And I was a junior or a senior. I just so happened to ask the grad student I was working with at the time how much money he made. And he told me, and I panicked. And I hate to be that person,
maybe I need to rethink this whole human factors engineering thing.
Well, no, I still didn't know about human factors engineering. I thought I was going to be a professor, like a psychology professor at Louisiana State University. And he told me how much professors made, and I was like,
"Oh, gotcha.
You must be kidding." And he was like, "Oh, no, don't worry. Between you and your husband, that's enough money." And I was like, my plan could not be contingent on me being married. So I need to come up with something else. And so I was freaking out. I was thinking about changing my major to pre-med. And finally, the actual professor that I was working with told me about human factors. So shout out to Dr. Goins, because he told me about human factors, told me about the program at Rice. And it was back in Houston, where I'm from, and it was a perfect fit for me because I was able to still continue doing some jury decision-making research while I got introduced to the concepts of human factors, and while still being at home, which helped because grad school was hard. So having my grandma around was really nice.
Very nice. So, go ahead.
I guess, and then I have to also say that my husband really helped me and encouraged me to finish and get my PhD. Because, again, grad school was hard. Once I got my master's, I was like, whew, got my master's. I think I can be done now. And he really encouraged me to stay and, go the whole distance.
Shout out to your husband, man.
Yes.
That's great. That's great. It's great that you have that support, at home, to help you, just motivate you and help you just, stay with it. A lot of people don't have that, and then, they get to a certain point and they break, and, next thing you know, they're dropping out. But that's great. So did you have any role models? Not even just growing up. Let's, just during your college years, once you started really getting into the nitty-gritty of human factors, engineering, were there people that you looked up to and said, "Hey, that's the person I want to be. I'm inspired by that person"?
Oh, yeah. A lot of different people that I came across. One being this woman named Betty Sanders. She was another Black woman who graduated from the Rice program in the human factors program. And I want to say she was the first Black woman to graduate from our program. There's no statistics on that, but just knowing that she did it, and my advisor actually made a point of introducing me to her and seeing what she was able to do with the degree. And she introduced me to people at NASA. She actually used to work for Lockheed Martin, and helped me meet some of those people. And so she really was a good role model for me. And then when I was at NASA, I worked with some really awesome women, and that helped as well because, again, you walk into a room and you know, especially in an engineering-heavy career, you're usually the only woman, let alone, you know, Black person. Yeah. So to see some really strong women at NASA, they were awesome, and they really helped me to just navigate the waters and make it through.
Wow. That really hits home with, you know, everything that the Blacks in Technology is really about, you know, what we focus on as far as our mission, as far as bringing awareness, as far as bringing visibility to people of color in this field, that you had those representatives there for you, so that when you went to these different establishments, there were people that were already in a position that could inspire you and that could motivate you while you were there. So, I mean, shout out to every one of them who made it realistic for you.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I sort of want anyone who's listening to realize that I don't come from a background where lots of people have PhDs or people are in engineering. I mean, my parents don't have been graduates of college. There are other people out there who are willing to help and just provide advice. And they might not seem open to it, you know, on the surface. You know, you walk into a room, everybody seems all serious and nobody wants to tell you you're mispronouncing this word. But just approach people. You have to be willing to put yourself out there to get that guidance and be mentored and coached. You know, be willing to take that.
Excellent. So let me ask you. You know, UIX. You know, the way when I first encountered it, and even now when I see it, now that I know more about it, it's a little bit different. But before, I usually associated, and I think some people out there typically associated with technology and design. But there's a lot of different types of research involved, right? Market research, or user research, and the like. So you work for NASA, where you led a funded human system integration research project for their exploration program. Can you walk us through like what that research entailed and why it was such an important thing for NASA?
Sure. So that was a few years ago. So I may get some of the details wrong, but
I need every single detail down to the last nut and bolt.
Well, if you need that, there's an IEEE article out there somewhere that. But the idea though was just when the mission, the change in mission was announced. So George Bush said that NASA was going to Mars. And so we were trying to figure out how to do that. So anyone who's familiar with governmental agencies knows that there's a lot of processes and lots of requirements, lots of documentation, and, you know, NASA's no exception, especially given the cost in terms of human life, in terms of dollars, in terms of scientific efforts that go into what NASA does in terms of manned spaceflight. So what we were trying to figure out is, now that there's this new mission that we didn't really know how to do, you know, hadn't done before, how would we make sure that when you insert a human into this plan, it doesn't all go to shit, basically. And not just that, but make sure that, you know, we get the science done, we get the mission is successful. And so there's something called, there's a huge requirements document called NASA Standard 3000, the Manned Systems Integration Standards, and that was written for the current mission, basically. You know, it was written, I believe, in the early 80s. So it was time to revise that. And not only that, we didn't want to revise these, you know, human requirements. And in this document, it's things like witches shall be 2 inches long and have space around it approximately 2 inches in diameter to accommodate gloved operation for pressurized suits. And so it's like really detailed requirements to say how to design equipment for different scenarios. So either weightless, EVA, or under extreme gravitational forces. So lots of data in there. So we didn't want to just update the standards based on, modern humans, because the standard was, again, built on military personnel in the 60s and adapted to, space. We wanted to update it to include women and, different body types, but we also wanted to be sure that this requirements document wasn't just a reference book. Humans were considered as a system in spaceflight. So there's, for example, there's a healthcare system. There is the air conditioning system. There's lots of systems that go into a vehicle. And so we wanted to make sure the human was part of the system. And that a human's capabilities was considered every step of the way. And so that was one thing to say, but this research was really about finding, getting with systems engineering, finding out all of these integration points, and identifying what level of information was needed from the human factors team at which point in the process to be most effective in this huge mission. So that was all process work and process-related research.
Wow. Oh, definitely. Well, no, 100% sense. I mean, but just the level of detail and the amount of information that sounds like you would need for that is just, it sounds so daunting that, you ever had something that, maybe even just a home project that you were like, oh my God, this is going to be so much, I don't even want to get started. That's kind of that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds very interesting. At the same time, it's like this is massive. How do you go about, and not to get too much into detail about this, but how do you? So, for instance, with code, when you're coding a big program, right? You break it down into distinct parts and services and things like that, and you have certain teams work on certain part of the code, blah, blah, blah. They all integrate it into one big piece of code, right?
Right.
How is, with that amount of information and that amount of work that needs to go into acquiring that information, how do you all go about doing it? Do you take kind of like the same approach in order to not be so overwhelmed?
Yeah, actually we do. We have an initial planning session where you try to understand, wrap your arms around the scope of the problem. But then, you cut off chunks. And just sticking with the math example, like trying to update this huge document, for example, we got an understanding of what the mission was as best we could, and then just divided it up amongst the team. So there's several human factors. There's other disciplines that are related to human factors, but are better equipped to address some of the issues. So, there's a part in there about how much food someone should eat. So, that piece got cut off or divided up and given to the nutrition team. And we all met back up and had integrations. We all had to integrate it together. But, yes, you divide that kind of work up. And similar to, fast forward to an application. At Dell, for example, you're building an encryption application. So I would be the person in core team to make sure I understand the requirements. But then I go back and work with my graphic designer, my usability contractor, my interaction designer to make sure we break up all those pieces, because one person trying to take all of that on, from trying to code something up, that's not going to be a good program. So
yeah.
it's a definite. So one of the skills that I think I've learned over the years, and that this degree has, or this field has instilled in me, is project management, which is kind of crazy. I wish I'd have learned that in school, but that was one of the things that Lockheed Martin definitely taught me. It's like, all right, work breakdown structure. Let's see, let's break this up and divide it out. The other thing is that I know just enough to be dangerous about a whole bunch of technology. Like, I don't actually know how to code anything. like you know, I'll jump on the message board and be like, what is DevOps? Like an astronaut locked us in a room for 4 hours and taught us how the space shuttle works, so we can start designing the displays.
Yes, that's almost, you know what? That, not to cut you off, but that almost sounds like I kind of equate what you just said to kind of like actors, right? Like actors, they go on these stints where they have to learn something for the role that they're up for, right? So somebody like I look at a person like, for instance, like Tom Cruise, and I'm like, wow, man, like this guy must have a lot of knowledge about a lot of things. Like not necessarily an expert in everything, because he doesn't train long enough or to be an expert. But he has to know a lot about a lot. For instance, he has to know a lot about shooting guns. Like he was in that movie about being a samurai, right? He has to learn how to use a sword. He has to know some martial arts. And then you talk about flying jets and Top Gun. Like he has to know a little bit about jet flying. So from what it sounds like, from what you're explaining to me, it sounds like that's kind of how you operate.
Totally. I don't actually know how to insert somebody's chest tube, but I had to learn enough.
Gotcha.
You don't want me to be the one that does it, but I had to learn enough.
I'd rather have you than somebody who doesn't know anything at all. So at least you have a better shot of getting that chest tube inserted right. Excellent. So go ahead. You have something else?
No.
Okay. So in your bio, you mentioned, your design for Dell's data protection, client encryption, and user authentication products. So how does UI UX tie into client encryption and data protection?
It's one of those things where it's similar to just any application. It's just in terms of encryption and data protection and authentication, it's one of these applications that people don't have to use very often. But when they do, like I was saying earlier, you don't want to have this high help desk overhead, this high IT admin overhead. So my role in that, because I was on the business client side of things, I designed the end user enrollment. For example, if you work for an organization that required fingerprint authentication, or for some reason you had dual factor authentication, I would make sure that as an end user, when you booted up the machine the first time and you had to enroll your fingerprint, you didn't end up bricking your machine. So that's sort of the consequence of a bad UX in that case. So I had to, map out the task flow to make it as simple as possible, because the end user does not really care. This is a policy that's being pushed down on them. So just to make sure they get their fingerprint in and it's done. And then on the back end, work with engineering and to make as many things that we could make automatic. That was a bit of software that now, that was probably 3 years ago. So I'm sure now it's changed, but it was a big change for Dell, because originally it was a piece of software that just came straight from an equipment manufacturer. And the idea was that it was just something that was on box and just worked, and nobody was really worried about it until they started to realize that people were actually using it, and so we wanted to make it simple. And so I did the research to kind of simplify that in-user experience. And then once we did that, we wanted to unify the look and feel of applications across the Dell business platform. So I worked with a couple of other folks in different parts of Dell to make sure we have the same graphic design. So that's also part of user experience. Once we have that graphic design pattern, design language is what it's referred to. Once we have those patterns and language locked, then I worked with the graphic designer to make sure my application looked and felt like the rest of Dell. And another thing is, like, I don't necessarily have graphic design skills, but I've picked up enough skills from designers that I've worked with to help to know how to manage that process.
Got you. Very, very interesting. I think you told us an interesting story. By the way, Danielle is a staple in our IRC channel for Blacks in Technology, and she told us a very funny story earlier about that experience. And what was that? I think you were saying, like, there were a bunch of people. I guess you were doing user research, and you just had people coming in, and they were like pressing their thumb up against the monitor instead of on the actual thing.
So that's the thing, is that those tests remind even me that you are not the user. I'm here to make sure that the user is in the process, and I apply as much as I know about psychology to that design. But you still need to get people using your technology, whatever it is, to see how they use it. Because, like I was saying, they don't care about your software. They're here to do their job. So they're not really studying to figure out how to enroll their fingerprint or what the case may be. So you really find the holes in your design and the holes in your technology when you bring users in off the street, or the appropriate users in to try it out. Because I thought I had a great design. Nice little graphic that shows how to swipe your finger, and people thought that they should touch the graphic. Like, oh, darn. Okay.
That's funny. So let me ask this: what are some of the steps someone might need to take to become an expert in UI UX? Like, what type of educational curriculum is kind of associated with that? What courses did you have to take in college, for instance?
Psychology definitely helps. So there's a lot of short courses out there now that are really focused to, UX research, and so they'll teach you kind of just enough so that you can do what you need to do. But if you want to think of it from a kind of a larger perspective, like there's a few different psychology classes that I would recommend: cognitive psychology, perception, how people perceive different colors, motion, groupings of objects. So all of that is, it's up in psychology. Computer science is actually useful. So I'm saying this and I never say CS, but CS is actually really useful for lots of folks that want to go more, that know they want to be into computer applications or web applications. And that's useful because it teaches you what's possible. And I hate it helps you push, but when you work with a team, it helps you push your team a little bit and know when not to push. And it helps you be more creative and more nimble when coming up with solutions to design problems. So having some understanding of CS or mechanical engineering or whatever you're in will help. Presentations. Learn how to speak in public. Learn how to use PowerPoint, because in UX, if you can't describe your idea, if you can't bring on board stakeholders, manage it, then you are not going to be effective. And then, of course, I would definitely recommend just getting out there and doing it. So, like I said, the best, like having that educational background is really important, and then getting internships. having that experience, knowing how to collaborate with people that are very different than you, both in terms of, superficial things, but really in terms of focus. You need to know how to speak to engineering, to product management, to marketing. And so there's no real substitute for getting out there and doing it.
Excellent. That's excellent information there. So, if what are some of the, I know, for someone like me who does systems engineering, there's a lot of different sites that I go to stay up on what the latest technology is, some of the latest trends. Like, what are some of the sites? Or is there? I'm pretty sure there's an ongoing educational aspect of UI UX that you kind of have to keep up with, I guess, the times and what some are there trends? Are there trends in UI UX that you have to stay on top of? And if so, how do you do that? What magazines do you read? What sites do you visit?
I guess I'm a bad example because I try to do as much as I can. So I follow a bunch of UX people on Twitter and see what they post, and I follow that. Of course, I try to check UX Magazine as much as I can. I'm a member of the Human Factors and Ergonomics Society, and while it's more academic, I need to keep abreast in what's going on in the science, too, because there's work going on there that I need to be able to apply. I also, depending on what project I have, I'll join different technical groups. So for a while, I was in a cloud meetup distribution just to see the kinds of things that cloud architects are talking about, so I know the right words to use and see what concerns they have. So I'll join different user groups. And of course, staying involved with Blacks in Technology helps too, because I need a bench. I need someone I can reach out to and say, hey, do these words make sense when I put them together?
Excellent. Yeah, and we definitely have conversations, especially around DevOps.
Oh yeah. And South by Southwest. I mean, honestly, I really try to go to South by every year because just walking around there and seeing what I can fall into helps me see new trends and see what's going on.
Gotcha. So, is there an aspect of your profession where you use more personal experiences to kind of factor into something that you're working on? For instance, like I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, does it always rely on hardcore, like, academic research, or is there ever a time where you're just like, you know what, if I did that, or if I ran into this situation, or, I tried that the other day or something like that, and that didn't work out. Maybe you should do it like this.
Yeah. So we're all human, and so we all do that, and I do that too. But what I try to do is, because I've been doing this now for almost 15 years, I see that I've studied some of this stuff before. So even though, so now that I work for an independent agency, we work for a lot of different companies, and I'm able to apply knowledge that I've picked up over the years to a new problem. So, yeah, I definitely say, oh, yeah, you know what? Tried that before. Like the IT specialist idea. Like, yes, it might be, you're an IT specialist in that you're a sysadmin, but you're not an IT specialist in that you know what polymer should go into this box that you're talking about. Yeah.
Hey,
wow.
Here.
Hey, Ayori.
Hey.
What's going on?
Oh, man, not much.
Hey, Ayori, she just popped in like in the last few minutes of the podcast. Have you been listening in?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Excellent. You must have questions then. Are you coming with questions?
No, I just wanted to say thanks, Danielle, for participating. We're so happy to have you on.
Thanks for inviting me.
Excellent. Yeah, and I have one more question before we actually get out of here. Maybe two more.
Okay.
We'll see. All right.
Okay.
I don't want to keep you too long. I know you're busy and important. So, this is actually a question, Ayuri's question that she added to the mix. So so big up to Ayuri for adding this question. If you were going to hack the user experience of underrepresented groups getting into tech careers or entrepreneurship, where would you start?
Yeah, I love Ayuri's question.
Boom! Just like that.
Yeah. So I started from the perspective of the underrepresented group. So one thing that I've learned and I feel like needs to be more expressed more often is prepare to be uncomfortable. Like if this is something you want to, if you are interested in technology, just go ahead and embrace that and go for it. And so in terms of having that experience, bringing someone who's interested in tech and putting them into a tech role. I'm a fan of internships, so I think a lot of the work that a lot of groups are doing in bringing folks into internships is great, and I also think that should be expanded to adults. Just bringing them into that role and giving them exposed to what it's like to actually work in technology, and how not just the discomfort. I say that, but embrace the discomfort, understand what it means, and know what you need to do to be more comfortable. But then also what it feels like to create something that people use and enjoy. Just experiencing that beyond just, oh, you're a nerd, ha ha ha. No, you are actually either creating it or helping other people to be successful in using something. And just having that feeling balanced on what seems to be this huge barrier of getting in, but you know it all, and having that feeling, I think, is how I would approach hacking that experience in this priority.
All right, great. You know what? It's funny because good friend of mine and others, Kai Dupuy, he actually posted this video of on Facebook about this young musician. She's like an indie rock star, indie pop star, or whatever. And one of her ambitions was coding and getting into code. She was actually, I think she taught herself to code, or she was learning how to code. But she was, she'd do her thing during the day, which is, she'd be a musician, she'd go out on the road, she'd tour, things like that. But in her spare time, she was like at a computer coding, sitting there and hacking and things. And I put a caption on the actual video, like, this is what these are the type of things that I wish would be conveyed to more people, especially our youth, but more people within our community, because sometimes I feel that there's this notion that you have to change who you are, you have to become somebody else or something like that in order to be in technology. And I see so many instances where this is totally not true. I always talk about a gentleman by the name of Jono Bacon, and I think he's either still a like some community advocate for Ubuntu, the Linux distro, and this guy is like, he's a coder. He's part of the Ubuntu organization, but he is like an avid thrash metal performer. Like, that's his thing. Like, and he's not doing the whole tech thing. He is out performing with this band doing like this hardcore thrash metal. And I'm just like, why can't more people see this type of thing and dispel that notion that somehow, if you were into tech, you have to get rid of who you are, and that you have to, conform to this this image that's not even really true, right? You can be out if you want to be a rapper. I hear a lot of people, everybody wants to be a rapper. How come you can't say it's okay for you to be a rapper if you want, but you can be in tech as well, or it's okay for you to play basketball or whatever and be in tech? I wish that would be conveyed more often, as opposed to the opposite side of that, where people are just like, we're playing basketball and being rappers too much. It's like we don't have to put down, art or athleticism or sports or anything like that to get people in tech. Why not? How come we can't embrace that part as well and bring people into the fold like that? I think that's more of a natural thing to me, as opposed to just saying stick to this and that's all you can stick to.
Yeah, and honestly, that enriches everything, right? So you would be that enriches tech by having people that have other hobbies, other things to care about. You bring your perspective into whatever tech role you want to fill, and vice versa. Your knowledge of technology helps you, design a better game or whatever you want. Whatever other thing you're interested in. I love science fiction, and now that I know how things actually work, I kind of want to be a science fiction critic. But I'll work on that later.
Excellent.
But yeah,
so
I still play dominoes. I still play dominoes.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. So, any last words before we jump off this podcast? What do you want to say to people out there who are listening in?
I don't know what else I can say other than trust yourself and be bold. So, if this is something you want to do, then reach out. Like, honestly, Black in Technology is a great community to just reach out to and ask questions, and just put yourself out there and see who gives you help and helps you along your journey. You never know. Like I said, I didn't know about human factors and how good of a fit it was for me until I was almost out of college and almost made the wrong decision. So just try it.
Wow. Thank you. Thanks for that plug as well. And that's what I like about our community so much, is that we have such a diverse pool of talent in different areas of technology, right? So it's not just a bunch of developers. It's not just a bunch of sysadmins. It's mechanical engineers, electric engineers, human factor engineers. We do have software engineers as well, systems engineers, database people. So, if you're listening to this and you have a person who's interested in technology, or you have, knows a young person who's saying, who's teetering on that line, or and they want to have a support system, send them to our community, blacksintechnology.net, and there's tons of people there to help them out. I tell people this all the time, especially even people who are still in or who are actually working in the field. I get approached all the time, just online, people asking me questions, and I don't mind asking or answering questions at all, but I think they'll get a better overall answer and a more diverse answer if they ask the community. So I always tell people, it's great that you're asking me, but, post it online, post it as a community, because there's other people there with experiences that I don't have, with knowledge that I don't have. They may be able to better answer your question and give you, better advice. I know Iori has been on the forums plenty of times giving great advice. And, that's what it's all about. So that's my spiel. So how can people contact you if they want to follow you? And
oh yeah, reach out to me. I'm on Twitter. I'm on the Twitters. I'm at Danielle PS0, and of course I'm on LinkedIn as well. But a good way to ask me a quick question is Twitter, because it does a great job of alerting me. but reach out.
Excellent. Well, Danielle, thank you tremendously for joining us tonight. This was a great podcast. I hope everybody has gotten great information. I know I definitely have, and I want to thank you for that.
Well, thanks for inviting me. This was fun.
Excellent. That means you'll be back, right?
Sure.
Excellent. Well, that's it for this episode of the Blacks in Technology Big Tech Talk podcast. Thanks to all of our listeners, the people on Twitter. Thanks to our guest, Dr. Danielle Smith, for joining us and dropping some knowledge on us about UI UX. Stay tuned in another couple of weeks. I think March 12th. We'll be joined by Yolanda, I hope I'm pronouncing her last name right, Conyers. She's the Vice President, Worldwide Functions, Human Resource, and Chief Diversity Officer at Lenovo. She's also an author and speaker. We are going to be talking about diversity at Lenovo, as well as a bunch of other great things. So tune in March 12th, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And remember, tech yourself before you wreck yourself. Take care and have a good night.
Blacks in Technology.
Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology.